Beautiful Saturday morning on the 15th day of November 2025 from where I'm seated here in Kampala. It's quite sunny, bright and beautiful. As always, it's the Capital Gang, the ultimate political talk show in the land. My name is Kasiate, Simon Kasiate, standing in for the perennial host of this program, Oscar Semwe Yamsuke, who is unable to be with us today. But gladly, I am here and the gangsters already taking position in their respective seats. And in no particular order, I would love to introduce them as they have arrived. But also, we have an interesting array of guests to join us on this morning conversation as we roll into the afternoon. And yes, Joseph Ocheno, a regular gangster, although not quite regular. Good morning and welcome to the program, Joseph.
Good morning, Simon. Fantastic seeing you here. I'm regular, but not particularly regular. But this is a great space, except that I'll officially report that there's been a formal swap of seats between NRA Permanent Angle, your end, and our fantastic friends in the National Unity Platform, who are not sufficiently as red as UPC.
Can we agree, Joseph, that some of those nitty-gritty descriptions of what's happening in the studio are left to the moderator, or in that case, myself? Can you tell us how you're
You know, I'm a permanent spokesperson of the father of this nation, so you're in trouble. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and Yusuf Serunkuma, welcome to the program and good morning.
Thank you so much for having me, Simon. I was just trying to alert Joseph Ocheno here that possibly in January, NRM and NUP are switching seats. So NUP will be seated, will take over State House, and they'll be relegated to the opposition. So possibly you're seeing a transition happening right in front of our face here.
Wow. If
Mr. Courage has spoken.
If giving a befitting welcome to a guest on the program is anything to go by, I think, Yusuf, you've nailed it. And yes, I think he was not in any way accidental in what he said. He simply meant that we have a gentleman who joined us on the gang, and he is sitting in the most inappropriate place, because that's one place that for the many years I have, starting for Oscar, I only see one permanent character seated right there. And that's the one and only Ofono Pondo in that seat. Except that today.
But Ofono Pondo is honorable, please, honorable.
Oh yes, honorable Ofono Pondo. And I know, of course, Joseph is saying that because he knows for a fact that Ofono Pondo represents him as his first member of parliament, considering that Joseph is not a very young man. And Honorable Ofono Pondo is already 1 foot into parliament as the elected, or should we say...
I can't believe that Ofono Pondo now officially represents me, by them over 50.
Exactly, and so this is how it is. So anyway, Ofono Pondo's seat today is, well, no prizes for guessing, Mr. Rubongoya of the National Unity Platform, the Secretary General of the party, but also a contestant for the Kampala Central Member of Parliament. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning to you. Good morning to all those listening in. Yeah, it's important sometimes to take over these spaces where the NRM has been for a very long time.
So this has been deliberate on your part to come and take over Ofono Pondo. And of course, you know the mischievous grin on Rubongoya's face when he does something as mischievous as he has done. He comes off as though he didn't intend to do what he has done, and then he firmly says he has done it anyway.
Bloodless coup.
Well, and then, of course, again, in the right place, because that's normally the NRM corner, is the one and only Martin Mugara, who's the Minister of State for Tourism. Good morning and welcome to the program, sir.
Morning, Simon, and morning to our listeners out there.
We've had a very interesting week, but I'm always very curious to know what's happening in the world of where we say explore Uganda. What's happening? What should we look out for? We're in times when, for the most part, in previous cycles of the same, some Western capitals would be sending or drafting advisories saying do not visit Uganda because there's quite a lot of upheaval taking place. And this time around we haven't seen that, but again, we are excited to know exactly what it is that would make for an attraction for someone to visit Uganda. So I'll start with you, the Minister for Tourism. Just break down the ice for us as we start the program.
Of course, I did expect to speak tourism right now, but probably I thought we'd speak politics a bit.
But let's first start with tourism, because that's what brings money into the country, and then we can go and spend it with politics.
Yes. But of course, I want to first of all thank all especially being a political season, all the participants in the election, starting from NOP and the others, that so far we've had a fairly peaceful election. There've been not serious issues of concern, especially from the tourism sector and the visitors who had intentions, who had planned to visit Uganda. So we are still seeing stable flows. We're actually seeing numbers grow. So the election and the usual heat around elections in some countries really has not been replicated in Uganda. And we are happy that people are coming into the country, money is being spent. And I've seen some candidates on the campaign will actually visit some attractions and show the beauty of the country.
Why are you saying that looking at Louis?
Yes, I have seen actually Chagulanyi in Kisoro speaking to tourism. And I've always told my brother Senyon in Parliament that sometimes it's good when you speak some positive about the country, not only the politics, because then you use your platforms to also market.
Wait a minute, so the opposite of positives is now politics?
yes, as long as it is positive politics and you're showcasing the country. So by and large, as a sector, we're happy, and I want to thank the security forces for really trying to keep this country stable and peaceful despite this season of a lot of heat. Probably, I know we'll dive into that discussion in the next few minutes. So generally we are doing well as a sector.
Tremendous. And yes, now turning over to you, Mr. Louis Rugongoya, who is the Secretary General of the National Unity Platform, but also a contestant for the Member of Parliament seat for Kampala Central. Two things have happened majorly to note in the week that we just closed in. Number one, of course, officially the campaigns for Members of Parliament did kick off in earnest, and officially, as one would want to put it. But also, you have been traversing the country with your flag bearer, the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi, looking for votes in different parts of the country, and most recently you were in the western part of the country, and something did happen when you were around Mbarara, and that something was not quite the pleasant thing that we would love to report about in an election, but here it is, perhaps one of the dark spots you'd want to mention in so far what has been a fairly peaceful campaigning season. Your supporters, you prefer to call some of them foot soldiers, rounded up by police, taken into custody. Some of them arraigned in court and remanded into prison. Let's start from an issue that is, I don't want to say closest to your heart, but let's start with the campaign where you are not just a supporter or a mobilizer, but you are in fact a candidate. How is it going for you so far?
Well, it's going very well. I launched my campaigns on Wednesday, and it was very good. People came out in very, very large numbers.
Was it you I saw in the other market near here?
A few meters from here, actually, in Kamocha. Yes. That's where we are launching our campaigns from. It was very exciting to see very, very hopeful faces of our people, and of course we've been moving around. Yesterday I was in the middle of town, listening in to the people, and I can say that it's very, very promising. And by God's grace, I believe we shall make it, and not just go to Parliament to be there for the sake of it, but to be able to contribute and to serve the people and make their lives better.
Well, to be able to serve the people and make their lives better is your catchword. But let me also just bring it even closest to your heart, Louis. What are you telling the people of Kampala Central to whom you would want to represent? What are you telling them as your key message, as your key?
Well, I've been telling them that they need leaders who can listen to them. I've been telling them that I'm a leader who understands their issues. I've lived around for over 20 years now, and I understand the issues around, and I think I am better placed to represent them, to speak for them, and to, do the cardinal roles of Member of Parliament, but in this context, maybe, and most importantly, in a different way, because we've had so many leaders who come with all these promises. It's very, very important that we get people hands-on, people who will go down to the ghettos and meet the people, speak to the issues of traders, talk about infrastructure, the issues that we have. The minister here is talking about tourism and all that. Statistics show that we lose about 52 hours every year, 52 days actually, in traffic jam in Kampala. Yesterday I tried to go to a mosque in the city center, and I had to just jump on a border after spending like 2 hours in a gridlock because of traffic jam. So there are many issues which affect our people. The taxation regime, which is very oppressive and not predictable. Issues to do with the class differences, and you get to see that the issues which affect the well-to-do in the city and the downtrodden, I believe that I can be a bridge to try to speak to all these issues. While the tenants are complaining that the rent is too high, you also need to listen to the landlords. Why are they increasing rent in these kinds of ways? Sometimes they're also complaining about URA and the property rates and all that. So I believe that I'm a leader who can effectively legislate, make sure that the laws we're making in Parliament are for the benefit of the people, provide oversight. Committees of Parliament have been talking about the corruption at KCCA and other entities. No wonder I saw General Museveni is talking about the money that is spent every year on roads, but you can see the state of roads in the country. So meaning that there's a very, very big gap in terms of oversight. Of course, I don't think he's serious when he talks about corruption, well knowing that he's the chief priest of corruption, as we have already said. And of course, when you talk about representation, being a voice for those people, making sure that I do not speak what I think, but trying to represent what the common people out there wants as the issues be tabled on the floor of Parliament, and like I said, all classes or all the different people in the city. And yeah, so those are some of the issues we've been talking about. Want to make sure there is a functioning night economy in Kampala. You go to all these places, find there's no light. Just something as basic as street lighting. We fail to do it in many of these places, and of course that leads to crime. People cannot work at night. So many other issues that we can talk about. But as the Secretary General of the party and the candidate at the same time, our message, of course, has been that, you might have all these ideas, wonderful ideas, which you want to push through, but if we do not have change at the top, the members of Parliament and other leaders may not do so much for the people. So one of the things or the main thing we're pushing is change of government in this country, so that Parliament can do its function, can play its role. You see now you have over 500 members of Parliament. They can barely get 2 minutes to debate on the floor of Parliament. NUP manifesto have said that we are going to reduce the size of Parliament, cut down on the public expenditure, all these things. So yes, while I want to be a member of Parliament and I believe I can serve to the expectations of the voters, I think the most important cause we have right now as the people of Uganda is to bring about change.
When Louis is speaking, sometimes you really don't want him to stop, because he just flows off like he's speaking a script from a part of his brain that is always functioning 24/7. But nonetheless, he's put his points across, and one wonders if indeed the eloquence with which you speak on platforms such as this is the kind of eloquence that you'll be allowed enough time on the floor of Parliament of 500 and plus people, as you have simply elucidated right here. But also one wonders whether this is exactly what the people want to listen to when you go on the different platforms and podia that you attend to in the city. Do people listen to this kind of are you able to construct these messages? People listen to them, or they prefer the sloganeering and waving of twigs and dancing and all that? But that you'll tell us, of course, later on the program, as you tell us deeper into your experience as a candidate and how the campaign is going. But let's go down to the campaign of your presidential candidate, which in the week that we are closing did see a skirmish in the Mbarara area where some of your supporters were arrested. One would want to understand from your viewpoint, this arrest was, should we say, like spontaneously taking place without your knowledge that you are being trailed, or some of your supporters were needed by the police to answer to certain charges? Because we see when they are arraigned in court, the crimes or their charges are perhaps not exactly what they were arrested doing. Much of this stuff they are being charged of is stuff they did months before, including a parade which you also participated in, but somehow you're a free man and you're with me here in the studio, but you were not arrested. So just take us back to that moment, because you were there when the arrest took place.
Oh yes.
Paint for us a picture from an eyewitness point of view.
It was a raid, and it's very unfortunate that the security forces choose to behave in this manner in all these cases. But first of all, we were conducting our campaigns. In fact, if you look at what they did not want us to even campaign in Mbarara city, because the raid, initially our plan was to go to Mbarara district first and then end up with the city. Mm-hmm. But then there was there was a throng of people coming with us from Mbarara. Then we took a decision to first do Mbarara city before we proceed to Ruvindi and Wizwera. And so these guys organized an ambush along our way, which is very, very funny. Because why do you ambush people in this manner? If you want to arrest these people, why don't you summon them? Why don't you? And we've even written to the IGP saying, if you need some of our supporters for anything, just write to the party and let's have an engagement. If you want these individuals to be interviewed about any offenses or whatever, they will be available to you. But what they've been doing, of course, is to abduct people, violently arrest people in other cases. So we're on the way to Wiziwera. And of course, it turned out that some of the people who were with us were operatives, because after conducting the entire operation, some people who came on borders who seemed to be part of our convoy
disappeared.
Others actually went into a
They didn't disappear, Louis. They just simply fled. They fled for dear life. They were afraid.
No, like I said, some of them actually went into the police van and it took them away. It was clear that
they were arrested also.
They were part of the. No, of course, they were not taken to the police cells where our supporters were taken. But before that, that they conducted a raid at a hotel room where our president was staying in Lira, arrested several people, charged 10 who are still in prison as we speak now. And then when we went to Chiruhura, the NRM people attacked us. Everyone saw that. And the police did not arrest those people. They came for our people who had, reached Mbarara. They came and picked up over 23 people and took them back to Chiruhura, charged them with assaulting the people who assaulted us.
Because you were wearing gloves that have nails in them, were stealing phones,
you guys show any picture of that kind?
You were robbing passers-by and curious onlookers. So you were menacing.
What happened to the people who were captured on camera with sticks, stones, beating up our supporters?
Are free men.
Nothing has been done to them. The police has not said anything about them and all that. So the attack in Mbarara was a culmination of all that. I was checking the figures now. We have over 150 people in detention.
What?
Over 150 since we started the campaign. Of course, that includes people who were picked up on the very day when our president was nominated. And, our first rally, they picked these people up. And so that is the situation. And it's, people have been talking about a peaceful election. And we knew for sure that once the people come out and show where they stand, when people come out and show this massive support to our presidential candidate, Robert Sentamu Kyagulanyi, the regime would inevitably resort to violence. Because for them, they think that in order to respond to any issue, they must resort to violence, since they have no other way of responding to it. Because
they are carpenters, so any problem is solved with a hammer.
Well, that's it.
Every problem is seen as a nail.
Yeah.
Well, that said, I think, Martin Mugara, you called for it. Here it is. It has arrived at your doorstep. You wanted to discuss politics. The politics has arrived at your door. Mr. Louis Lubongoya, who is the Secretary General of the National Unity Platform, but also a Member of Parliament contestant for Kampala Central, has put across what he believes is not in the realm of what you earlier described as a peaceful electioneering period. That for them, as the National Unity Platform, they have witnessed, as they have always done in similar circumstances, violence from the state, arbitrary arrests of their supporters, charges of for frivolous crimes, and that in all does not speak to what you describe as a peaceful election, including mentioning the fact that in some areas where they have gone, people come out who obviously are supporters of the NRM, armed to the teeth with sticks and batons, beat up their supporters, derail the campaign of their presidential candidate, chase him away from campaigning in their area. And one wonders why you, as the NRM, which should by all intents and purposes believe that you are popular and well grounded, should not be in a panic mode of this nature to hunt down a candidate who has the right to campaign in an election that in fact you have sanctioned as a government and are organizing. What would you have to say about that, Martin?
No, thank you so much, Simon, and I want to congratulate my friend Ruvongoya here upon his successful.
Louis, is that man your friend? You see, he has said
he's been my student, in fact.
I am actually his former student, yes. Wow. Upon his successful nomination, and I wish him success. Simon, I think I just want to speak to, and I think I've said this a couple of times, the biggest challenge in this country is our failure actually by the NRM government and the other institutions, independent institutions, to effectively effectively manage rule of law in this country. I want to assure you, and I've seen the Electoral Commission guidelines, especially given to the candidates that have been nominated as presidential candidates, on how they should conduct elections. And the penalties.
How they should conduct campaigns.
How they should conduct campaigns. And they were all told to submit their routes to the venues, specific routes, and specifically for NOP. I think in some scenarios there has been an abuse, even for the other parties, but the other parties may not sound as popular as NOP, and that's why it doesn't matter whether they stand in the middle of the road or what, they don't attract much. I think it's mainly national unity platform.
A man like Munyagwa is listening to you this morning saying what you are saying, Martin, and I don't think he'll be happy with you, but let's proceed.
Yeah, but I'm saying what I've been seeing on social media and what I've been following in the political space.
Thank you.
I just want to give you a scenario of what happened in, for instance, in Budaka. And I think that's why the Electoral Commission put these guidelines in place. In Budaka, the Honorable Nandala Mafabi, the candidate for FDC, while going for a rally, stopped in the town, stood on top of the roof of his vehicle and tried to address a rally.
In the middle of the road?
Yes. And his crowd, the gathering he had, was attacked by NUP supporters. There was a serious fight. People got injured. Stones were pelted at the candidate. He actually retreated and later came back to hold the rally. Actually, the confrontation went on until now, the actual venue. And you can see people got injured. And I think this is why, this is where police, as the holders of the mandate of protecting people and their property, would come in handy. And that is why we are saying, probably, Electoral Commission is saying, listen, Mr. Chagulanyi, we don't want these incidences to happen, because when they happen, the people endangered are the local people. And who is blamed finally? It is the government of Uganda. In Chiruhura, for instance, and I've not heard them talking about that. And I think Nandala has stood and told the NOP supporters, right from the president, if you don't stop attacking my candidates, sorry, my supporters and following me at my rallies, I'm going to do the same. So you can imagine if that started, where would we end? Would have lives lost. If you look at what happened, for instance, in Chiruhura, and I expected Rovongoya to speak about it, because you see they cry victim most of the time, where they had a designated area, venue in which to campaign. The candidate actually refused to go to the actual venue, decided to stand in a town where probably they are supporters of. Yes, I am saying what I saw on TV. Yes, it's okay, you'll defend yourself later. Stood in the city center, and they are supporters of NRM. That place is predominantly NRM. And as a politician, and Rubongoya will see maybe with time as he joins politics, that sometimes we have overzealous.
He's a politician.
No, of course now as a candidate. That sometimes you have overzealous supporters.
You think he doesn't know that? The man has foot soldiers in his constituency.
Yes.
Who are willing to die for him.
Yes. Who actually overzealous supporters that may not have necessarily received the command from you to do some actions that would probably endanger the others. And that is why police is saying, no, you're not to protect you and the crowd. Please, this is the area we've designated, use this route. But when a candidate continuously insists and puts the others in danger, I think this should not be acceptable. And
just pause for a moment, Honorable Martin Mugara. Yes, granted, a party may have overzealous supporters who may not wait for a command from the top to carry out activities to show support, such as beating an opponent and all. But shouldn't it be vested in the party leadership, therefore, one, to call out such acts of overzealous supporters that go beyond the call of duty of a supporter, like we saw in Chiruhura, beyond calling them out, also taking responsibility, capitulating to the fact that they are indeed some bad apples within the rank of their supporters, and rebuke that action. Have you in the NRM rebuked the action of your supporters in Chiruhura, or even called them out for the nuisance that they became?
But Simon, I think the NRM is busy with the campaign, really, not policing its supporters. There are guidelines that have been in place to make sure that these scenarios do not occur, and that's why they are saying we've created a venue for you. Do not go through a town. Use a particular route, and we'll protect you through the route. And they probably have not had Rovongoya here speak to his supporters that attacked the supporters of Nandala in Budaka. So I think NRM is busy with the campaign. I think let's just follow the law, and that's why I'm saying that there are serious reprimands when these guidelines are abused, including suspension and expulsion of some of these candidates out of the election. But we don't see this happening, and I think that's business as usual for us in Uganda. Our failure to implement the laws that we've put in place. Now, I just want to say, and I saw the scenario that happened in Mbarara, that my brother was speaking to the arrest. But I also want to thank police. This time they came out and spoke to the cause of these arrests. I know these people are in charge. They read the several charges on the charge sheets. That at least for the first time, we see some accountability being given. And I think this also played well in the hands of the opposition, especially NUP per se, because before that scenario, there was no major incident on this campaign within the ongoing campaigns. And that's why I said, by and large, the campaigns have been peaceful. Even with these few incidents, the election is still moving on fairly smoothly. And I know that these are the only few instances that have given some of these opposition parties some light and some focus. That has not been happening. And yes, but when I listened to the police spokesman give his statement, I think Mr. Kituma, he really spoke to these charges. And the more you restrain yourself, and this grows, of course, after some time it goes into something bigger and it could explode. We could have an entire exchange between the police and some of the NUP supporters. The policemen have been beaten, and so many of these things have been profiled. I've seen videos where actually NUP supporters attacking policemen, beating people. I have seen these myself. So I just want to request my brothers. This is an election we are all involved in. It's good that we protect, first of all, the people that we move.
Protect the gains.
Yes. No, the gains are protected. But we protect the people that we move with at most of these rallies, but also the people that we are going to speak to out there. I just as I conclude, I saw something very interesting. When they were recording the videos in Mbarara, as they were arresting some of those people around Kyagulanyi, and he kept running, and you know how the supporters holding the phones and the cameras. Please, they are going to kill our president. Please, share as much as possible. Katambuze. And Kyagulanyi is being protected by around 10 policemen, secured by the very policemen. So I kept wondering, if the regime wanted to do away with this man, they would use this very policeman next to him. Actually, at one point, he told the policemen, his bodyguards, you protect these people for me first, some of his supporters, so that they are not arrested. And I find this very, very, very ironical. And the reasons he was giving, the NRM is now worried. They didn't know would have support in Mbarara because we've been gathering crowds. And if we were to go by that as a standard, then we'd declare Museveni a winner. Because where he has gone, yes. No, please, you'll have your time. Let me just conclude.
Let this man exhaust himself.
No. You'll have your time.
Ferry their crowds from schools and other places.
Yes, it is okay.
There's no information you're giving, Yusuf. I have refused. Yusuf, I have refused now. Let him finish. I protect the minister. Yes. Martin, please proceed.
Yes. So if we were to go by that standard, and I have attended His Excellency the President's rallies in Karamoja. I think all the districts. He has been doing 2 districts a day. He flies to a certain place, almost to a certain place, doesn't go through a town, goes to the rally.
He flies.
Let me conclude. Yes.
Does Kyagulanyi have, as a presidential candidate, have the same should we say,
privilege, yes.
to fly in a military chopper?
No, let me conclude. He goes to most of Israelis.
He flies.
Yes, whichever you want to use. Of course, he's a president.
Yes.
That one you can't put away from him.
I love how you have said it unapologetically, and that's exactly what I wanted you to do.
Yes, he is. He's not the president. My brother Rubongoya keeps claiming.
Who doesn't collect
Who is
taxes?
being given money? No, but we give him anyway the 4.7. Unfortunately, this time he didn't get it.
Why?
But at least we've been helping him to buy.
Joseph. Behave.
No.
Let's conclude.
I don't want to go into that debate. That man has been given by the NRM government. That is a fact. And if he didn't want to give it, wouldn't. And that is why it has been stopped. Listen, that is why it has been stopped. Are they getting it now? Until they meet certain standards is when they. But I don't want to be derailed by my brother here.
Derailed by Yusuf.
I have seen the president attend these rallies. He goes straight to the venues, and he keeps looking at his watch. He cannot campaign beyond 6. The moment it's 10 minutes to 6, he'll stop the rally and leave. And I think that is what
he's abiding by the rules, or he's simply a little too old to stand the heat of a campaign after 6 p.m.
No, he's abiding. So for me, I know that by and large, this rally has been very peaceful. It has failed to gather good traction for some of the opposition people. They have failed to portray the image they wanted to portray to the rest of the world. They have gone to now provoking the police, provoking other people's supporters, so that there is some clout and noise about, so that they get content to the funders, but also sympathy to the Ugandans. And I don't think it's working this time. And I still want to ask the police and the security. I know Kyagulanyi is a headache to security, and I want to say why. Because you see, he's an asset of the state, and I think these are things that my brother Rubongoya may not see. That there are so many. Yes, there are so many people within the NUP. Actually, the very people that move around them, and so many people that would want to see Kyagulanyi endangered, or probably harm. Yes, harm caused to his life, and then place blame on a government for their benefit. Now, the security will not allow that to happen. They will make sure, and I want to tell Rubongoya that yes, it's true. Within your own presidential immediate circle, there is a lot of security. You don't even know it is. So it is everything to make sure that Kyagulanyi, I want to tell you it is a fact, to make sure that Kyagulanyi stays safe, that you'll not move recklessly and endanger his life for the other opportunities to make a big advantage of, so that they portray NRM as a bad government. So I just want to give you my word that even as Kyagulanyi moves carelessly into crowds, and I think that's why I keep saying he has become a problem. But the country is going to secure him as an asset until he loses the election, and he continues his life. And probably, my prayer is that since Rubongoya chose this seat, he stays in it in the next government, but on the NRM side.
Okay. Wait up now. You who are listening to us from wherever it is that you're catching us from, you don't have the benefit of looking at the facial expressions of people in the studio. Now, if there is anyone that has a facial expression that you cannot read, it's Rubongoya. They put across so many things to him, and the man has this facial expression of, I'm not here, actually. He's into another space. Then you look at Joseph Otieno, he's looking with mischief as always on his face. Yusuf at some point gets angry, and I now don't know who among us.
Simon, I have been looking at them the same when they submit a couple of times, and it's not an issue.
I know, but I was just about to come to your facial expression too, as they submit and even lay all sorts of allegations against the NRM. You look at them with this kind of expression that is empty, to say, okay, what are these people talking about? But anyway, that's for me to enjoy as I look at you explaining yourselves and debating amongst yourself. One would love at this point in time to invite Yusuf, who is an academic, who is a researcher, a social commentator, critic, and sometimes hostile guest on the Capital Gang, as he proved himself last week when I hosted him. I hope today is going to be a bit kinder to me. Having listened to both sides of this political spectrum.
Thank you for making him smile for the first time in 10 minutes.
That's a provocation.
Yusuf, I want to start from the point where Honorable Martin Mugara did say that as Kyagulanyi moves carelessly throughout his campaign.
The
government
minister
is going to protect him until he loses the election. Those were his words, not mine.
I wanted to say first of all that the minister makes it look like we're here for the very first time. But this is the first time Chagulanyi is standing in an election, or this is the first time the interim government is holding an election. In 2016, a very memorable incident should be instructive. The government provided security detail of Dr. Kizza Besigye went head to head with the security forces of the government, to the point that the security people came up and said, if you don't want us to protect this man, then redeploy us. This is the security detail provided by the government, fighting to protect the candidate, but fighting against
their own.
To the point that they said, if you don't want us to protect the candidate, redeploy us, because you deployed us here and we need to serve.
Or change the order and say, by the man you're protecting, arrest him.
Arrest him. We don't make it look like we are new to this game. We've been here before.
Where do they take orders? But I don't want to interrupt you.
But I can give you space to inform me.
I know where that is headed, Yusuf. You want to buy some latitude to cause trouble later.
Giving information is part of a healthy debate.
And not today.
The minister makes it look like we are holding the first election in our lifetime, right? 2021 is not too far. It's 5 years ago. We saw what happened to Chagulanyi, that he had to move around in a bulletproof vest. And over the long period, his entire entourage, composed of civilian, friendly protectors, and were all taken away. Chagulanyi told us in that election that his security detail was being changed without his awareness, right? All of a sudden, it gets new hands being deployed to protect him. That in itself is telling. So if you tell us that, if they wanted to finish him off, they would use the same people they put around him to finish him off, they can't really do that for the reasons you've given, that he's a problem to them, because they don't know, because it's an election period. It's very fluid. You're not very sure, if we did what we'll have to do, what would happen. It's the unpredictability of the events after what you've said that they can't dare touch him, right? But it's they're experimenting with possibilities. November 2021 is not too far from us, and I am waiting for Chagulanyi to start campaigning in Uganda, right? I'm waiting for him to start campaigning closer to the seat of government, so that we can see whether this election is actually peaceful. Because right now in the far-flung places, if this is the behavior we are saying, then the closer he gets to Kampala, because government sits in Kampala, the most politically aware people in Kampala, the people who interact with the mess of this government are in the central region. So the closer he starts campaigning in Kampala, that's if he gets allowed to do that, then we'll see. Right? Because the trick is that you securitize the election. You say this is a security issue, you can't come here because of security, because of your own security, and then you don't allow him to campaign. But we'll wait and see the closer he gets to the city. Okay? But that's a small point for me, Simon, because if you signed up to a circus of an electoral process, you have to go by every bit of it. Right? It's a small point for me. And what has happened over the long period is that both government and people in the opposition have signed up to a circus. The joke we tell ourselves is that we're a democracy, and I feel at pains, listening to David Lewis Luongoya, that after telling us that 150 people of their supporters have been picked up, it's like a footnote which he just gives you and then continues. You see, it's a footnote. You need to mention that, but we keep going, we keep moving. Right.
Later on, I will put it to him as to what. Okay, let me even first put it to you. What would
Simon,
you rather
let me just finish this point. I'm going to take the question. But when you remember November 2021, is that even after the massacres in the city, it continued as business as usual. They still went back to the campaign trails all through the full stretch of the electoral process, right? I think we are in a search for seriousness.
Even after the brutal shooting to death of Honorable Chagulanyi's driver in Arua,
they continue the campaign.
The campaign continues.
So this is the problem for me, is that people in the opposition also signed up to a circus with all these,
what would you rather? Or what would you rather they would have done?
I think that's maybe let's push that ahead a little bit. Let me first finish this point. That, on the one hand, we're not a democracy. We know that. We know this is a modern autocracy, which allows the facade of an election to carry on. But that election, the results are predetermined, and they're not afraid of going the full stretch of violence if needs be. They're not worried about that. They're ready to do that. And they have good arguments for that. The minister, these good arguments are sound. For your own security, we're going to arrest your supporters because they are acting outside of the law. For your own security, it's a good argument. For security reasons, we won't allow you to campaign downtown Kampala. It's a good argument, right? But it's a scapegoat. It's a securitizing a thing which doesn't have to be securitized, right? So it's a circus we signed up to. And that bothers me a lot, that, we often return to this every after 5 years, return to this joke. My friend Timothy Kadejira, the journalist, asked me, can you picture a moment that, Yoweri Museveni will wake up and say, I have lost this election and I'm returning to Rajtura. And picture for a moment that the CDF, who happens to be Museveni's son, and on different occasions has actually sent in threats to Bobi Wine, will say, now we are a very professional army and we are saluting the new commander-in-chief, who happens to be Robert Sentam Chagulanyi. The jokes we tell ourselves. We're very, terrible optimists that we carry on with this joke that this is possible under these circumstances, right? And, I was thinking about Lewis. Lewis here is a very wonderful gentleman, And one thing that bothers me, that Lewis, as a Secretary General of a political party, or perhaps the biggest second political party in the country, Lewis thinks his position is small, that he has to go to Parliament, than focusing entirely on organizing the political party. That bothers me. It's like there's a man that I think he's not been here before, Patrick Wakida. Patrick Wakida is a friend of mine. He is a director in Uganda Investment Authority, but he thinks that's a small position, so he wants to go to Parliament. So he has abandoned his position as a director in Uganda Investment Authority to go to Parliament. You see, what a joke.
500 plus people?
Yeah, because he's in a position where he can actually contribute to the development of this country as director in Uganda Investment Authority. That's a big position to contribute to the growth of this country. But he thinks he's small, so he has to go to Parliament. And we think being Secretary General of a political party as big as the NUP is a big job. Because you're coordinating the operations of everybody else, that you don't have to go to Parliament. As to contribute to this country, you have to stay there.
Yusuf, or maybe David Louis Luongoya here, having been Secretary General for over 5 years, he believes he has made his contribution as Secretary General, and he would want to cede the position for another capable member of National Unity Platform, for example, Olivia, this lady who is now in jail, and other foot soldiers to come in and organize the party.
But I'm here to explain that.
Doing exactly what they accuse Museveni of not doing.
He'll maintain both positions.
Well, I think I'm here in the studio, so I'll explain that.
And I'll conclude on this.
Please forgive me for putting words in your mouth, sir.
Simon, I don't want to carry on too long. One of the now that Lewis is here, I see the guy called Abraham Luzi as imagery of this electoral process, right? That he has studied.
You have to bring in that stone in the shoe of
wait. I just like how he has turned this entire process into an absolute circus. So
why? By simply telling you the truth that electing him is actually to your own advantage.
No, yeah, because that's.
I'm going ahead to tell you the height of his wife.
Because he's come off as a wonderful clown, and his clownish character has given him traction, right? And he's not clowning in the wrong place. He's clowning in the right place. That when we decide to sort of go into a thing where results are predetermined, we know, for example, the NRM will have majority in Parliament. It already has many unopposed people, I think about 15.
Well, it also has a candidate in every constituency, which
we'll have a
you
sizable,
and Louis don't have.
We'll have a sizable, articulate opposition. But in our Parliament, as Museveni has told us many times, you can sleep and wake up and vote. And what carries the day is numbers, right? Which means a man as articulate as David Lewis Luongoya, his usefulness to Parliament is very minuscule. His usefulness. Because that parliament is not a parliament. It's not a space
So
of
minuscule
real-
that you would rather he doesn't go there.
No, that rather he focused on the bigger job in front of him already, right? But what Lucy has done is to say it's a circus, and let's enjoy it. And he was enjoying it. He's clowning everything. That he has to conclude every sentence by saying his wife is tall, right? It's a joke.
But no, it's called branding. And
But Yusuf, if you don't mind, beyond that and beyond the parliamentary question which Louis is going to respond to, what sort of is the alternative? Because this, as you suggest, is predetermined, and this is where we are. We are circus. We are basically escorting Mr. Museveni and this NRA bunch. Granted.
And that question,
what is
the alternative?
the alternative?
And that question could not have come from a better person than Joseph Otieno here, who held a pole position in the Uganda People's Congress, which for perennial years has accused the NRM of running this country aground and calling every round of elections a circus, as you've called it.
That's why I'm
and
delighted.
He offered himself to stand as a member of parliament in his home district in Tororo, and no prizes for guessing, he lost the election.
No, it was stolen by this bunch. But anyway, carry on.
Simon, in response, and I hope I don't carry on for too long. In
No,
response,
you have a minute because Joseph has to come in for the top
in
of the hour.
response, I think a core part of, if you go to the hospital, a core part of treatment is getting the question right, is getting the diagnosis right. At present, we think our futures are guaranteed through electoral process. We have reduced all our political imagination to elections.
Answer the question. What is the
I'm
alternative?
answering. So the core part is, let's first of all diagnose our condition right.
And you think we haven't?
So the diagnosis is that we can't reduce ourselves to Museveni's timeline. That we become politically active and super active in that moment when there's an electoral process. Because you see...
But other times when there is no campaign, Rubonga here cannot be allowed to address three people outside the studio of Capital. He will be arrested for mobilizing an illegal
That's the
crowd.
point I'm saying, that we have reduced ourselves to following Museveni timeline.
What we need-
I think we need to cultivate political space ourselves. Let me give you two examples, right? Bang the Tables campaign.
Please,
You know, Bang the Tables. Isaac
Yusuf,
Samakade, Councillor Isaac Samakade. Let me finish this point. It's
you
about...
have had something like a defiance campaign. Dr. Kizza Besigye is in jail.
But we
for-
need to keep, look, the way we keep returning to elections, why don't we keep returning to those avenues too? Why do we, like, once they fail one time, we're done. And then we keep returning to the elections even when they fail. Why don't we
doing the same
constantly
thing
return to them?
with a new result over and over again?
But it's the
for
same
some
as the
people.
election. It's the same. We keep returning to the election even when we know the results are predetermined. But once we define one single moment and there's a failure and they're like, oh, it doesn't work, why don't we keep returning to it? You see, when Bobi Wine emerges to the political scene, people power was not Museveni's timeline. It was people power, a movement outside of an electoral cycle. Why don't we keep returning to it? You see, bang the table. You see the work that activists are doing online, Jimmy Spice and Tongo. The work that they are doing, that to the point that even Parliament turns around and follows their work. They're not subjecting themselves to Museveni's timeline.
When you say bang the table and one looks at the Uganda also, where David Louis where I was, I think in the course of this week, I saw him there. You can clearly see that society really is at what we call a stalemate, is unable to do anything except to open its doors and close and have the janitors clean the place. But any other thing beyond that, they are non-existent. Let's turn to Joseph before the top of the hour so that he chimes in and gives us his perspective from an elderly perspective, and also I think from a point of happiness that at least he has already a member of parliament representing his interests as an old person from eastern Uganda, and no less than his own brother from the same district of Moland.
I am disappointed. I am disappointed because I am actually effectively a fan of young people, and that's official, by the way. And so most of my fans are young people. And so to suggest that I am old, which is not necessarily that bad, is to undermine my efforts to ensure that Uganda People's Congress, the party of the future, is represented by faces that have got relevance tomorrow. But thank you. No, I am delighted in a way because it is extremely sad that as an old enough voter of 1980, when NRA was banging the table, what we were accused of as UPC, I can authoritatively say...
Let's be honest and call it UPM.
We told you, actually, NRA UPM. You're absolutely right, NRA UPM. You're absolutely right. So we tell Ugandans, we told you so. But I will not bang and chest thump. I will sing with remorse and sorrow that... after 1980 general election, Simon, where I was a first-time voter, and where I was in Agongera, and where I also joined UPC at Mwiri, and where I moved in between Mwiri and Toro and most of the east, and where throughout the campaigns I never saw police officers in campaigns, in campaign rallies, and I never saw scuffles, including in Agongera. And that's an election in which Mr. Museveni and his group think it was so crude, violent, that they had to go and break people's necks in Luweero, and 45 years later, we are talking about the mess where Bongoya's supporters, up to 150 of them, are in jail. That's very sad. But number two, you know that you gave me that age. It's true that I'm a net contributor to the campaigns, Martin, for return to multipartyism in this country. I'm one of those people, and my party completely committed to pluralist polity. In fact, you guys are very lucky that What and I, plus a few others, chose that the response to Mr. Museveni was not going to be breaking people's neck to reclaim this country, but rather through political, legal, and diplomatic means, return this country to a democratic process, therefore by killing Article 269 of the NRA Constitution that banned political party operations. We fought and defeated that with our friends in DP. Simon, when we did this actually November 17th, 2004, I don't know how old some of the listeners were at the time, we got return to pluralism. When we did that, we didn't expect that with the return to pluralism.
For perspective, the listeners need to know that in 2004, you and I were talking on radio on one of the stations in town on a regular Saturday program.
You're a fantastic young one too. Thank you.
I'm an old man.
So we thought the return to pluralism would return us to a situation in which, notwithstanding the lies that NRA talked about in 1980, and notwithstanding the beauty and restraint that UPC government, UPC 2, had in a parliament, Martin, of 1981 and 85, where NRA and DP were busy throwing bombs in Kampala, but no member of parliament would be restrained the manner in which NRA guys are doing today. That notwithstanding all those, we would today be campaigning around elections in which a candidate is not allowed to campaign in particular locations. But that said, I have said, because I know we're going to a quick break, and I'll come back to this. One, that these campaign schedules, I don't understand the Kiruhura thing, which is completely unacceptable. Away from the unacceptable sticks, where there's some people in Kiruhura who think their sticks for cows are much more easily usable on human beings than their cows. I'm told those guys trust and they respect their cows so much that they don't touch them with these sticks, but they can use it on the citizens of Uganda who are campaigning. Where is the Electoral Commission in this? My elder leader, Simon Biamakama. If it is the case that EC guidelines provides locations, it is genuinely true that if NUP guys cross the line, tell us, enforce the law, go through the process, the law and guidelines, tell Ugandans, and we shall support you. Simon, I led campaigns, or part of the leading of campaigns and demonstrations in Makerere University before exile, and I campaigned hugely abroad, organizing demonstrations, working with the police. So I know how these things by and large work. If it is necessarily the case that the police feel that for a particular reasons you cannot and you should not go ahead and have a rally in front of the National Theatre, they'll give you a location which is appropriate. And it's really up to you and responsible for you and your supporters to make sure that you do it properly. I did it several tens of times, should be okay. Yeah, but if it is the case that...
that was you trying to demonstrate in Trafalgar Square.
Trafalgar Square, and even in Kampala. Even in Kampala, when Museveni's friends, the Boers, did Samora Machel, I was one of those people who led the campaigns from Makerere University to march into town and say, why hadn't these guys issued this particular statement to denounce the killers of Samora Machel? So we've done that also, including Kampala, and again and again. But the point really is this, that if it is the case that NUP guys are breaking guidelines, you communicate that. Maybe the EC need new spokespersons, maybe the police need new spokespersons. But if it is the case that the police seemingly is targeting NUP supporters, it's completely unacceptable. Which links me very quickly to Yusuf's point.
Yeah, Joseph,
Lewis,
you couldn't elucidate that point even more, and with the respect of time, let's take in a very short break. When we return, then you will start from there and try to drive your point back home. Now, this program is powered by way of brewed Ugandan coffee coming in from Star Cafe. And I have seen David Louis Lubogoya enjoy that cup of coffee. He will be telling us what the taste feels like as we proceed. Let's take in a break. Indeed, it's the Capital Gang. Welcome back to 91.3 Capital FM. And yes, the gangsters already halfway the program discussing issues around the election campaign as underway in Uganda, the official launch of the campaign for members of parliament, and of course in the studio we have a contestant for the Kampala Central MP position. Also we have Minister Martin Mugara, who's joining us here to discuss not tourism for the most part, but to share his 2 pence on the politics of the day. And of course, the other person I did refer to, who I did not mention, is David Louis Lubogoya, who is the Secretary General of the National Unity Platform. The regular gangsters is Yusuf Serunkuma, rabble-rousing as always and creating a storm in a teacup, as is the case with Joseph Ochieno, member of the Uganda People's Congress. I forgot to add the word, the defunct Uganda People's Congress. Sorry, did I use an inappropriate word? I said defunct.
UPC is the future, young man.
Yeah, but right now it's not in the present. Well, just before we get back into the conversation, there is some information I would love to share to you, listeners, and by extension, our gangsters here, that in the week that we are going to begin, there is a huge and massive project, which is the Karamoja Peace and Technology University project, where the president will return to Kotido in Karamoja next Sunday to inaugurate it. This university was conceived in 2014 and launched as a university project by the president in 2023. It is an initiative of the Catholic Diocese of Kotido and Moroto and the Catholic Lawyers Society International. Discussions to turn it into a public university are already ongoing, and the project has generated a lot of excitement in Karamoja as a landmark turning point for the region. Imagine a university project in Karamoja, where you can barely put a finger to an appropriately well-run primary school, secondary school, and eventually leading into a university. But, well, here we are. We have it. At least there's a university there. All right. Returning to the conversations around the politics of the day. Something is also beginning to bother many observers, that there is a return to machete-wielding people in some places in the country, and this may be attributed to the political machinations of the day, and very specifically to the bad manners of Nup. Gladly we have the Secretary General here, so he'll be telling us whether they are perpetuators of this alleged insurrection of machete-wielding people, or it is the handiwork of people from Honorable Martin Mugara's political party, as Joseph Ochieno has repeatedly accused you of creating anarchy and blaming it on other people, as you did from 1980 to 1985. Joseph, before we went in for a break, you were speaking, but how has been your coffee served by Star Cafe?
This coffee has been fantastic, Ugandan coffee. It's possible. When UPC was in government, we made sure that coffee was top class, and in fact, the Bogolobi project was amongst the most, it was actually the second largest, most complex on the continent. In fact, the second best on the African continent. With the Minister for Tourism, it's actually possible that we can do our coffee and make sure that we make net value addition without pineti, and that we're able to do so and make sure that coffee is able to help.
I thought you were going to tell the Minister for Tourism that rather than turn that Bogolobi silo into an incubator for some funny investors and turning it into a tailoring workshop, he could at least, for purpose of its history, have a trail of people to go and tour it at a small fee to see what the government looked like in terms of efficiency.
Indeed, and Simon, now I know you're not particularly very young, meaning you're young enough to remember that I actually wrote in my opinion piece then in the Sunday Monitor on this question of Bogolobi, and I was really taunting these NRA guys who turned that place into a place for basically nearly almost effectively abusing young girls in the name of making dresses. But of course we already had Nightingale and other establishments that made fantastic clothes that were exported to major markets around the world. But as a matter of interest, before I might forget this Karamoja thing, I find it extraordinary. What you don't know, Simon, was that in the year before I started primary one, 1971-72 actually is a major headline. The best performing sub-region district in education in terms of scoring A was my Bukedi, which is now the poorest. And Museveni the other day was just abusing those people by telling them about roads.
You've not been doing the mathematics.
Number two.
Wait a minute, Joseph.
Yeah.
You started primary in 1971.
72.
You claimed here that in 1980 you were adult enough to...
Yes.
make a choice at an election.
Yes.
It meant that 10 years after you started your primary one, you were 18. Joseph,
Yes.
you started P1 at 8.
What are you suggesting?
Let's proceed.
You know, there are many candidates for those kind of questions, but not me. But no, I did that in such a fantastic way. But I can also tell you, so Bukit was the best performer with A, My Tororo, which is now a slum in education. But number two, second best performer was Bukit was best with 96.6, getting grade A across the country, followed by Karamoja with the 96 net of grade A at that time. So meaning that if we continued with the quality of education across the country as UPC had programmed at the time, today the university in Karamoja would be neither here nor there, a conversation. But it's interesting that this Karamoja project is actually a church project, not a government project. But for people who are campaigning and for political organizations who are lucky enough to have candidates for president to campaign around the country, maybe you should have a conversation with us so that we're able to give you, leads towards which you're able to have a conversation to challenge this NRA's track record of 40 years in education. But as I was saying very quickly, campaign schedules, the Electoral Commission ought to come clear, the police ought to come clear. It appears from the conversation we had during break, Simon, that actually there was somewhere in between where Louis' side may be slightly more on the right. But that said, I think Yusuf raised a very important question about the fact that candidates get beaten up and we continue the following day. Louis, from a strategic perspective, there is something beyond the details of Yusuf. I find it extraordinary that your supporters can be beaten, roughed up. You get the experience that you had in Barra the other day, and then the following day is business as usual. There's a theory out there that some people say, where are your leadership? So you really don't care about 100 or so people. I'm actually trying to say strategically, away from going to the bush, which I don't advise directly at the moment, I'm suggesting that, maybe political leaders in the opposition ought to take a position and maybe challenge the EC and simply say that, if our people are being beaten up, the manner in which it's happening, we are going to hold back. One of the points here is that, Simon, some of us in politics, including opposition, we are taking it so much like business of money. It's either elective thing I get to position or not. I'm not suggesting that onto NUP. Maybe we need to throw it at these guys. I told Cecile Ogwala in 1995-6, when they were pushing for these, the donors are saying we must go for these elections. And at the time for us, the campaign was we needed to release political parties, meaning repeal of Article 269. Beyond that, we are not going to participate. When Bangladesh had an election which was rigged, the opposition said no. They went to the streets. They demanded, Yusuf, you may find this interesting, demanded that they are not going to participate in the process second round. You know what? They compelled the government, to fresh elections, which fresh elections the opposition won. Meaning, Yusuf is saying that young Ugandans and older Ugandans like me, including old Ugandans of the generation of Mr. Museveni who are interested in this country, ought to be able to say that, there is another way by which you can actually charge the citizens responsibly and make sure that you make it impossible for the kind of impunity we are seeing in Kiruhura, the kind of impunity we are seeing in Karamoja, the kind of impunity that we see with Kizza Besigye and others, and that you're able to make sure that these guys recognize that, power of the people does not necessarily mean you must pick up guns and break up people's necks and legs. Maybe I think that's where I sort of want to agree with Yusuf. But a quick point that came much earlier is this presidential privilege thing. A future UPC government would review very urgently and very quickly the privilege of the president, where election time comes and the president still has 100% full privilege. I think it gives excess power and authority and privilege to the incumbency, regardless of whether we've got a leveling off of the processes. And I'm saying this, built from other countries. You can retain elements of privilege, but not the kind of full privilege that the president does have at the moment. So basically, that is a genuine food for thought, including this thing that you have elections in February, and then you can go ahead and do whatever you want to do in the state for the next 6 months. These are food for thoughts. But I know these are constitutional changes that took place during the 1990s when political parties were banned, in which case people who were thinking for the constitution were people who were thinking that UPC was the problem. So there was no deep political thought in the constitutional making process. And I say this because some people who are part of the constitutional making process are listening, and many of them, when they touch the NRA Constitution of 1995, they think you've committed some kind of a sin against Obana Jesus. The elements of this thing which was done, which was so shallow, no wonder Mr. Museveni drove people to the 1995 NRA Constitution like zombies. Can you imagine that constitution? That constitution, Louis, somebody working in 1995, a constitutional making process which political parties were not involved in, they go ahead and put Article 269 that bans political parties. And here, 30 years later, we are celebrating Mbu Constitution. That's why I call it NRA Constitution. It was a terrible constitution. One of those things that we must urgently review in a future UPC government, and possibly a future government. In the event that maybe NUP guys, you come into government next year, consult with us, we shall have a conversation. But even an NRA government, even in the event that NRA comes into government next time, we are open for a conversation so that we review some of these things.
Listening to you who are old enough to remember something called the Pigeonhole Constitution, and I don't know, one, if the Pigeonhole Constitution was not the handiwork of the UPC, but two, if it were to compare with what you call the NRM Constitution, I can swear to you the NRM Constitution would pale in comparison.
Terrible. Pigeonhole Constitution was a UPC Constitution. I am delighted to relate with it. That Constitution was an emergency Constitution, an emergency interim Constitution, and it was a Constitution that was provided for when Parliament existed. The government of the day was the democratically elected government. Who elected these guys in 1986? So please put context to these things. That the interim Constitution, yes.
Joseph Ochieno, Constituent Assembly delegates that sat in the conference center for months,
for years, and wasted a lot of our money, by the way. Yes,
duly elected by adult suffrage by Ugandans in 1994.
When political parties had been banned, there is no country in the world where a constitutional making process has taken place when political parties were banned. Do you remember 2 representatives of political parties and 10 representatives of the army? It's not surprising, Simon, that we're having this conversation
arguments
here.
Never end, especially where it comes to the emotional attachment you have to the nostalgic days of the past of the UPC.
No, it's a commitment to this country.
Can we go past those days, Joseph?
And that's why I'm going to... Okay, in 30 seconds, you realize the Pigeonhole Constitution was an interim constitution for 1 year. Then we came with the Republican Constitution in 1967.
Let's use all that
energy
to support people like David Louis Lubongoya to show us the future. You have a bright future.
You saw me looking at him, because I believe they're the future, together with the future of Uganda Post Congress.
David, before Yusuf comes in, I would have actually asked Yusuf to come in first, but then I remember that Yusuf made a submission to which you have some serious reservations. He does prescribe something you ought to do. That number one, you are in this sham of a facade of an election. You are in a charade. And yet you continue to participate like it's business as usual. The only thing he doesn't provide you is what is the alternative to what you could have done. But please tell us, you're here in the studio. So
thank you very much. First of all, before I even respond to Yusuf, Honorable Mugara here made very many statements which were definitely false. He accused us of abandoning the venues that were given, which is absolutely wrong. That's false.
Those statements, he made them on the microphone, or it was during our time?
No, he made them on the microphone. He made them on the microphone.
There was a lot of...
some off mic.
There was some animated conversation you had, and we will not refer to that because our listeners didn't pick it up.
Yeah, but the ones I'm talking about are the ones he really spoke on the microphone, where he clearly said that, for example, he was talking about what happened in Chiruhura, where, the media was there. You saw what happened. Even from Liantonde, where our president spent the night, these guys came out with sticks, started attacking our team. So if you say that even from the route which he was using, and you saw the statements they were making unapologetic about them, saying we are going to beat you up, calling us dogs, and using all sorts of terrible language.
But Louis, you are very familiar with that area.
Yeah.
For every 5 men you see, even on an ordinary day without an election, and 6 of them holding sticks.
But and I saw someone saying that ridiculously. But these are people who aimed at our campaign and clearly said you cannot campaign here. Even in other places.
If you don't mind, because they're very important. Have you made a formal complaint to the police and the Electoral Commission, and what do they say?
They haven't responded to us yet. In fact, I wanted to make this point that we made over now, I think, about 15 complaints, because everything that happens to us, we know the Electoral Commission is also has its issues, but we try to ensure that we're on record, at least with regard to everything that happens on our campaign trail. we normally write complaints to the Electoral Commission. Unfortunately, majority of them end up there, nothing happening to them. Now, why the campaign continues when these guys do the kinds of things they do to us? In fact, after the raid in Barara, we sat as a leadership and we were asking ourselves, should we continue, should we stop? But then we realized that in the last election, every time they did these kinds of action, we stopped and we lost valuable time while they continued doing what they were doing. So we asked ourselves, what's the point? Because it seems that the intention,
valuable time to wait.
The intention of the regime is actually to achieve what you're advising us to do. They want to come and attack you,
terrorize
and
you away
stop
from
the campaign. Right now, as I speak, we've not campaigned in 5 districts. We've covered 67 districts as of today. There are 5 districts where we've not been: Iganga because of violence, Chihura because of violence, Padel, Otuke, and Kanungu because of terrible roads which prevented us from reaching there.
Even Kanungu, David Louis Lumongoyama.
Yeah,
there is a new Tamakro from Rukunjini down
the
to
question.
Kanungu.
No, the question is where we're coming from.
The routes, yeah.
You've been seeing
Yes.
the terrible roads
Connecting from Kisoro to...
Exactly. That our teams have been using. And so we end up sometimes failing to reach those places on time. Many times, actually, the police will divert it from the main roads. And you know that. I've been seeing the NRA people saying, why do you divert these people to these roads? Because they're exposing us. They don't want you to use the main roads. They want you to use the longer routes. You, instead of using 20 minutes...
Do you negotiate these routes with them at all?
Of course not.
Oh, okay.
You just move and find a roadblock somewhere, and they say you're not allowed to use this. You need to enter and use a much longer road and all that. So... the reason why we decided to continue in this particular instance was because in the last election, we suspended our campaign about 4 or 5 times. You remember when they killed people here, we stopped campaigning, we came to Kampala, we met the Electoral Commission together with the police. They come, of course, like Yusuf was saying, come and securitize the issue, try to, give whatever justifications, and the Electoral Commission is there as a listening post. They don't interrogate to ask these security chiefs why is, for example, if the security guys come and say NUP is doing processions, they don't ask why the NRM is doing processions and nothing is happening to them. Because you've seen everywhere Seven is going, they go as far as getting all these children from schools in the area, making them walk, push, going to processions. The Mbale saga really exposed them. Because these guys were almost, even when their candidate delayed to come, some of the people were hungry and they said, let's go. They said, no, you cannot go anywhere. So they were literally under detention in there. They said, now that you're here for the NRM rally, you can only leave after the candidate has spoken, which is extremely...
If you don't mind, Simon, your fourth estate, do you think you guys are not doing enough as a fourth estate to bring up some of these other issues as part of the context of what is, Yusuf is saying? Because I'm saying the citizens ought to know the truth of what is taking place in as most an objective one. And
Look
I'm giving
at the headline
yes.
of today's Daily Monitor and remember that where you are speaking from right now is part of the media, and we are doing exactly that which you say we ought to be doing, which is pushing the spotlight on this election. But David Lewis, let's proceed.
Yeah, and I was just trying to say that to be fair to the media, for example, I think the Chirura saga was really captured well. It is a situation which came in to change the narrative, but everybody could see these guys who came to attack us, and even the language they're using. And they came up even after that to say Chagulan should know that there are places he should not be campaigning. You should know that, in certain places, they don't know him, he should not be campaigning. And we're telling them.
That's more reason why you should be there.
Because there was a lot of suppression. When our president reached there, then people came. People had been intimidated. People who had been chased out, they came and received him. Went to Kazo, had a very big rally, which they did not anticipate. Went to Mbarara, and everybody saw what happened. Now, and that's why I was asking him, when if he says, they are...
Asking him...
Honorable Mugara here. If he says, these are just enthusiastic supporters, why are they not being prosecuted? Because you came and arrested over 150 supporters of NUP. Why is it that these people you call enthusiastic, who were holding sticks and stones and attacking people, I mean, Ichituma Lusoke is completely quiet about it. He's not saying anything like that.
The police is still investigating.
Now, why go into elections? We go into elections as part of what you're actually describing. We look at, first of all, and I think Teno asked you a very important question. what is the alternative? From our perspective, an election gives us an opportunity actually to reach out to the people. You've seen us try to do nationwide tours outside an election period. We are blocked after the second big event. The police will write you and block you. We've tried to, of course, lead protests. You saw when there was a protest about the corruption in Parliament and how the regime responded. It has been our clarion call every day for citizens to exercise their power, the people power, outside the election season and in the election season. So an election season provides you with an opportunity, first of all, to reach out to the people, get to the masses, places where you would ordinarily never be allowed to reach. And our message to those people is, wake up, exercise your right. That's why, for example, we talk about the protest vote, saying that now this election is about people protesting against injustice, against impunity, against bad governance and all that. And the question about, okay, you've kept doing this election after election, you know, this eternal hope is very, very important. And you are a historian, you know that definitely dictatorships are stretched and at some point they fall. There is never the rise and rise of a dictatorship or an autocratic system. Eventually they fall. What you need to do as a citizenry and as the leaders on this side is to keep pushing in and out of an election season. Now, and when you talk about continuous defiance, that's what you see. I mean, the reason why we continued campaigning, I think that's part of that defiance, that the regime comes and picks up your entire, state security. The state comes and picks the entire security team, the campaigners and all that, and you continue moving. You have Eddie Mutwe, the Achileos and others in detention. Maybe the regime wants you to do exactly what you're suggesting, that maybe they want you to do exactly what you're suggesting.
Before we go in for a break,
can I just ask a question?
You ask after the break.
Are you suggesting that, to that point, if the entire entourage around Bob Wine is picked up and arrested, Bob Wine will continue campaigning?
Absolutely. In the last election, they did it. They went to Kalangala. They went to Kalangala and picked up his entire team. And again, we discussed this. The question was, if we stop campaigning, these guys, you remember at that time the Electoral Commission had written and said he's not going to be allowed to campaign anywhere in Uganda. They said COVID cases have increased in Uganda and all that. So it was clear to us that the intention was for him not to reach certain places. And so we said, you know what, if this is the intention, let's continue moving. While we do not abandon our people. You've seen, for example, these guys, after arresting these 150 people we're talking about, now we have prisoners in Abim, others are in Lira, others are in Mubende, others are in Liantonde, Mbarara, Chiruhura. They've put them in different districts.
No, if you don't mind, just for a cheeky one, but on air, that part of what Yusuf is saying is that can't you guys just pull a bluff onto these guys and just say, just lose one week, maybe 3 days, and say we are not going to continue with the process because it's not sustainable unless our people...
I'm not saying that, okay. You misunderstand me completely. No, I'm not...
And that we did in the last election.
I withdrew.
That I can say we did in the last election.
Also, Joseph, I think what you are simply putting is a full and glaring explanation as to why UPC is in the position it is today. You feel
Simon, you're enjoying the fact that Yusuf and I have disagreed, but that's not the point.
Take those kinds of approaches.
Yeah, sure.
If you're dealing with a civil government that will respond to that kind of thing. I've told you in the last election we stopped our campaigns several times after attacking us, killing our people and all that. We would stop. We come back to Kampala, engage the Electoral Commission. We go back. The police behaves even in a worse manner than they were behaving.
If you could allow me to clarify something. You are connecting that once they pick your people, and you move away from the campaigns and continue pursuing your people, that's not the right way. It's not part of the electoral process. All I'm saying is that you think the campaign is the high road to the presidency. I am saying, if you just said, we are not continuing unless they release our people, so the next phase of your campaigns is getting your people back, that is the right way also. It's not just that, there's a value.
So you're not disagreeing with me, Yusuf, are you?
I'm disagreeing because
also, Yusuf,
you're making stopping the election look like it's not a form of
Yusuf,
No.
Yusuf, the presidential candidate proceeds with his campaign, but those responsible within the party hierarchy to look out for their arrested comrades
And that's what I'm saying. That
I
the
shall
objective-
withdraw my communication strategy
The objective
platform
of the
for myself.
campaign is to reach out to the people, and that for us is very important. When our president goes to Chisoro and is able to speak to the people of Chisoro about their challenges and also to embolden them. What we've seen about this campaign, for example, you saw yesterday people moving around with very, very big guns. These military people who are deployed amongst people and all that. And usually what happens is that the people run away
Because
when
they've
they
seen
see
that.
one person.
Okay, let's take a
But
break.
when we
Use-
tell them that actually this is just your servant, this person who's holding this gun is your servant, you see people actually emboldened and they come together.
David Luis
Maybe
Lubongea, let's take a short break. When we return, it's more on the Capital Gang. Welcome back. It's the Capital Gang, and yes, closing into the top of the hour, but having our conclusive conversations on the topic of the day. And I will now turn to you, Honorable Mugara Martin. You've heard the postings of the three gentlemen. Today it's a completely all-male panel, and Joseph Ochieno, Yusuf Serunkuma, and now David Luis Lubongoya, all of course leaning to the other side that is critical of the NRM. You as an NRM person, having listened to the challenges these people are talking to, having listened to some of their very brilliant suggestions on how to better our democratic process, what would you have in terms of a response to what they've said?
Were spoken to, but maybe I'll just restrict myself to a few. You see, when Mr. Wongaya was speaking, the SG for NOP, and in my earlier submission, I'd actually alluded to an incident that happened in Budaka, where NOP supporters had attacked FDC supporters, and it got bloody and out of hand.
Those were not our supporters. I wanted to give information on that.
Well, I watched it on TV, and Nandala Mafawi actually made the allegation, just like Nup is saying right now, just like you're saying.
No, for the state people were putting on state uniform and all that.
And it's not news. In the previous elections, of course, we've had Nup supporters attack NRM supporters in the city here. It was very difficult for actually an NRM supporter to put on a yellow T-shirt and march through Kampala. So it is not news, and that's why we are saying this can happen across board. That's why it's important that we adhere to the regulations put in place by the Electoral Commission. That in order to protect you and the rest of the people, let's designate particular routes and actually go to particular designated venues where we can accord the security. But this can happen across board, and you cannot say that this is unique to the NRM and we are trying to, maybe we are perpetuators. No, I don't think that's the honest truth. I think this can happen. And just the other difficult thing really, because you see, as much as you're going to a venue, you should move quietly. Just drive through. Yes, the designated area for you to campaign is where you've been given space to do a rally. Just give me a second. Yes, if you're going to the rally, drive through the town quietly in your vehicles, but you don't go. Yes, and actually those are the regulations. Do not campaign along the trail. Do not get out of your vehicle, stand in a town, get a microphone.
You're going to watch a Uganda Cranes match
Yes.
in Nambole.
Yes.
You are leaving Nansana.
Yes.
Quiet.
Yes.
Until Nambole.
No, it's okay. No. This is the difference. You see,
You've just used the wrong word. Quiet.
No.
Concerts in the towns before Museveni
It's okay. Let me make it simpler.
Clearer.
Whether you go through town, you're in a procession, do not stop and attempt to hold a rally. Do not stop, open your roof, get a microphone, because that is what is that.
Hold concerts on the road.
That is the honest truth. That is what is happening. I'm talking about a procession that has actually a candidate in it.
So what's the difference?
Yes, having Chagulanyi. You see the good thing, Rubonga, these things are being watched on social media. I'm not making allegations out of my head. These are actual facts. So when you go through a town, you stand, it's illegal because that's not the right area for you to address a crowd. You go to the designated venue. But let me
stop, block roads and campaign on the roads.
Okay, two wrongs don't make a right, Mr. Rubonga. The question is he making a true assertion? Do you sometimes disrupt what should otherwise be your program?
No,
to address
Rubonga can
people?
respond to that after.
We use the right routes with next stopovers as agreed with security and other people in the area. Surveillance.
Rubongoya can, because I know as they are going to a rally in a district where one is supposed to address one rally, they will make 10 stops in 10 trading centers. These are facts. And actually, this is where the problem is. You're not well secured. You have, and that's why I kept saying we'll protect you and make sure you get to the election day and lose. But we will not leave you careless. Yes, we'll do that for you, and that's the mandate of government. Now, I just want to say this, and I, of course,
as we conclude,
yes, as from what Yusuf and Joseph said, I'll say it conclusively. But Joseph, when you speak about coffee, and that is why the NRM, it's important that the Rubongayas learn from the NRM strategy. And from what Yusuf said, indeed, you will notice that as Chagulanyi gets to the urban centers, his rallies will start to grow in numbers. Different from what has been happening outside the main urban centers, especially in central Uganda. Yes.
Outside.
No, outside central Uganda. And this has been the NRM strategy. And that's why it's going to be very difficult to beat the NRM. And I just want to use an example. And this is a challenge for the elites in this camp, or even in the studio, who do not know how to make this last mile connection. We speak brilliantly, we speak to the challenges of the NRM, and we all agree we have not done perfectly, or we've not performed to 100%. But what aren't you getting right? Who are you appealing to? Now, the NRM government, I want to give you, just using our numbers. I'm a chairman NRM of my district. When I was contesting for chairman NRM, I had to contest at every village in this country. There are 30 NRM leaders, 30. And we have around 72,000 villages in this country. If you did a multiplication, that's around 2.1 million voters, NRM voters. Now, if you look at the previous election, for instance, where His Excellency General William Museveni won in 2021, he got around 58% of the vote, and he got around 6.1 million votes. Now, when you get just those 30 and multiply by the 72,000 villages, you'll have around 2.1 million voters. Now, let's say, and these are mature men beyond 18, if each of them has a wife.
No women.
Even women, yes, if a woman has a husband, if each of them just added 3 votes of the 30, that would be already 10 million votes for the NRM party. And I want to assure you, we are not dreaming. This is reality, and these things will happen. And all of us have been, and I don't want us to use the advantage of saying, you see, the NRM is in power, we are using the state machinery to grow these numbers. No. All of us have been facilitated by government.
You're making the assumption, Honorable Minister, that being an NRM leader at grassroots could possibly also mean invariably that you're going to vote President Museveni at an election. I have seen candidates in constituencies like Rubongoyas who leave their home with 5 adults in their car to a polling station. And at that polling station, the candidate gets 2 votes.
Yes.
And then there is a quarrel in the car. I left, we were 6 in the car.
Yes.
And everyone is claiming, Daddy, it is me who gave that vote.
Yes.
So it's not always true that because you are an NRM leader, you will vote the president. But also it's not necessarily true that, for example, your spouse is going to vote the same candidate as you.
Yes. You see, Simon, even if we made
because
that...
if we were to ask in the household, and I'll put it to Honorable, to Mr. Joseph Ocheno, let's look at the household of Honorable Jimmy Akena. If he went to a polling station with his wife, is it a guarantee that those 2 people are going to vote the same candidate? But we'll pose that. That's theirs to answer. I'm just giving you.
Yes. You see, Simon, even if we made that consideration and put away that number, yes, I think it would be maybe less than 10%. Would still achieve the number we are speaking to. And I don't want to, because I know if Lewis is given a chance, he will say, you see, you're using state machinery. All of us have been facilitated by this government. I was telling you, it gets around 4.7 billion every year. How they choose to use it is where the issue is. You choose to build a structure that can be physically seen and say, we're outperforming the NRM. The NRM is saying, no, the structure that matters is the actual voter. That's where I'll make my investment. And it is very easy to convince these people. When Joseph here was speaking to coffee, for instance, I was just saying, in 1986, we were exporting coffee worth around 360 million US dollars. We are now exporting 2.2 billion US dollars in coffee as a country. And this coffee is being grown by these peasants. They are seeing the additional value in money, and this campaign has been done deliberately by the NRM. You're having people getting 1 million per parish. And this is where the magic is. There is no rocket science whatsoever. Unless you connect those dots, I want to assure you, yes, we understand their challenges, but who do you deal with? Who do you strategize with? If I ask Teruvongwe, I am a chairman NRM Toroko, and I can invite him to my district willingly, and he shows me how many mobilizers does he have per village. So you cannot win an election. And if you look at, for instance, we have around, I think, 556 members of parliament now. You're asking how many have been fielded by the opposition or by the strongest opposition party, which is maybe 200. But of the 200, who are the real serious candidates? Probably still less than 5% of the actual number. So how do you speak to, you see, I am the next president, I was cheated, when you don't have this together? So I think we're just making, and I think we should be realistic, really, and make arguments that make sense. Not just standing here and you imagine things, they cannot work. The reason Capital FM is listened across the country is because you've opened up branches there, you have a strategy to reach people. If you don't have it, you cannot sit here and yell and think you can win an election. And that's where the NRM keeps beating us. So I am also very unhappy, and that's why I said, as happy when Rwonga has contested, we want to see brilliant brains in these parliaments. We want to see people who really speak, for the young people we speak to, like, but you must get the actual...
You pointed, Joseph, when you were saying young people.
Yes. He's still a very young man.
And I speak for young people.
And he speaks for young
and
people.
I represent the interests of young people. And my party does.
So for me, my advice to still the opposition.
As you conclude.
Please, you learn from the NRM. It has been in power for 40 years, not by mistake. It has been there deliberately and because of strategy. And I want to assure you, even in the next election, they are going to beat the opposition hands down. And I've given you the reasons as to why.
Wow. Yusuf, you've heard it from the Honorable Minister. He has said in no uncertain terms that this election is done and dusted and is already at home. So get to the microphone and make your concluding remarks.
2018, Omar el-Bashir won an election with a huge margin, and a year later, he was being chased like a chicken thief out of office. He had the same structures, the same networks as the minister has spoken about, right? The UPC government in 1980 had those similar structures across the country, and they won the election with a good margin. 5 years later, I wouldn't say that me just like chicken thieves protested out of government, right?
They were toppled by their own army generals.
No, toppled by NRA, DP, and Mr. Museveni.
Simon, the assumption here is that Museveni wins an election because he has campaigned in every part of the country, that he has a superior manifesto, that his legacy in the past, his achievements in the past 5 years are so great that it gives him a new mandate. Yet actually says Museveni wins because he is Museveni. Okay? I've said here before that Museveni wins. Museveni doesn't even need a manifesto to win an election. He is the manifesto. Museveni is the manifesto that what he wakes up and he wants to implement it, he will ferry MPs to Rajtura or to Entebbe, give them instructions, they'll come back to Parliament and pass it. He is the manifesto. So he doesn't win because he's traversed the entire country. And this is the point I wanted to make to David Lewis, that if you work with that assumption, you're also going to try to traverse the entire country, present a superior manifesto, assuming that Museveni won because his things were speedier. You see, and I think that's a false argument. If you say, if we stopped our campaigns, for example, and turned our campaign into making sure our people who are being raided and arrested and thrown into jails became the campaign, you lose valuable time. Valuable time to where? To participate and continue the full stretch of the election, only to lose because it's predetermined. Only to have a sizable parliament, a member constituency of an opposition MPs in parliament, where they would speak till the chickens come back to roost, but their articulate points don't carry the day. You see, so this is what bothers me, that we've reduced our political imagination to just elections, and we think participating in the election is the only platform. we need to carve out spaces for our own selves. We need to carve out spaces. If the government doesn't allow you to organize and go around the country, that is the campaign itself. Constantly return to that and say we need to go to these places and mobilize, right? Because one of the interesting things is the opposition holds the NRM at fault for small things. Like you see, if NRM ferries school children to go and campaign for it, you shouldn't hold them at fault for that, because under a good democracy, every school which wants to have its students follow a particular candidate, they should be able to do that.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. But the problem is that under URM7, we're not a democracy. You can't do whatever you want. If there is a rich person in this country who wants to donate money to NUP, if they really believe in the NUP and they want to donate money, if they did that, URM will be the weapon to throw them out the drain. So URM will be at their guest the next day. Maybe there will be weapons in their homes, and their crime would be donating money to NUP. So clearly, we're not under a democracy. But the problem with us is that we sign up to this thing. We keep returning to it. And I can guarantee you, in the coming days, in the days ahead, so far the number is at 150.
By the time you're back here next week,
it will be 200. By the time we reach January, it could be 1,000. And it bothers me that, people in the opposition treat this as a footnote because they are afraid of losing valuable time, and they keep moving. You see, my appeal, and we made a mistake earlier in this conversation when, we started.
I can almost read what's in Rubongoya's head. He must be saying, look at this Yusuf man. Okay, you come and join politics, and then
Simon,
you see whether you're able to practice what you're preaching.
We made a mistake at the very beginning, putting me on the spot, and I think Davis here, Lewis, to sort of start thinking about what are the alternatives. I think this is not the right platform to start thinking about the alternatives. What I'm doing is putting out the diagnosis, and then creatively, as a group, we need to go back to the drawing board and say, we need to find strategies. Because Yusuf alone can't have the sort of the foolproof strategies. I don't have them.
Let's conclude,
but
Yusuf.
I am like a guy in the laboratory. He gives you the diagnosis. He says, this is our problem. And then he passes it to the doctors. Or a group of doctors say, let's think together. The problem for me is that all our political imaginaries, all our futures, we say the right time to imagine is go through the electoral process, because this government won't allow us to campaign. This is an autocratic government. What do you expect? It's an autocracy. What you want to say, when the biggest irony is that we go on, like throughout the 5 years, we are saying Museveni is a dictator, Museveni is an autocrat, Museveni is a dictator, Museveni is a dictator. And then we go to the campaign.
Meanwhile, in those 5 years,
like
the moment President Museveni swears in like this, the next thing he begins his campaign for the next election.
That is true, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then we still claim, this man has 100% state privilege, as when he's still a candidate. You see, a candidate with 100% state privilege, and we think we're going to beat him in an election. And then we participate to say, as we're raising awareness. The Ugandan public, this is why in 2021, when we speak about the wave,
okay.
I'm going to conclude on this one. When we spoke about the wave was a reflection of the yearning of Uganda. They didn't even need to know the faces of the candidates. They didn't even know their manifestos. All they wanted is that, are you promising to overthrow this government? We'll vote for you. This way, after the election, people would be like, now we have voted for you. Can we get to know you? You see, the entire idea was that we don't need a manifesto.
Then what happened?
Like, this public is fully aware of how bad this government has treated them. You don't need to sort of exhibit this government again. You see that I go around the country making the people
aware. Let's be
aware.
fair to other members around the table and say we allow for Joseph to make his concluding remarks. Have you said bye to our listeners? Goodbye.
No, I mean, it's
sorry.
It's difficult things for me to do. You can't write love poetry under apartheid. These farewells are difficult to do in these moments because we have a quest for seriousness. But we seem to have signed up to a circus. You come up to a show, you say, oh, greetings, listeners, I'm happy to be here. It's a pain that we have to make these arguments to the point that, I sit here, listen to this man, the minister, right? The minister. And you listen to him sound technical. We do this. We're in a space of politics. There's no technicalities here. Museveni is violent. He's an autocrat. But you say he's done this. Bashir did the same. He was just the next day. Obote did the same. Bashir won an election by 98, the year he was overthrown.
Joseph,
by 98%.
We know that the forces that led to that spring and change of governments there, as you can see, eventually it's coming home to roost. That's why a man like President Sarkozy is in jail, and many others are certainly going to follow, to tell you that some of these were not organic and they were not homogeneous, homegrown insurrections, but they could have been factors coming in from another. But Joseph, you may wish to
they're a terrible lot. They're a terrible local lot, and shame on them. And for the record, they're a terrible regional lot that worked with them. If it happened today, I think the country would be on fire. So yes, the forces that overthrew the government, the UPC government, and that fought the UPC government were illegitimate forces. They used regional forces, which is completely unlawful, and they used international self-interest to do so. Today is 15th of November, 2025. Yes. Bruh.
We're not talking 1985.
You asked me to give the context.
To conclude.
No, because it's a terrible thing. So these guys overthrew the last democratically elected government, and they were under the mess in which we are. But lest you forget that these guys had a major Obama minister. There was a major international interest, Western interests that were working through local oppositions, turncoats. That is not the case today. To break the progressive government that was serving the people that had. But anyway, whatever the case, Simon, quickly the Mbale thing. I think Yusuf is right, and as I've said this elsewhere, it's not a problem for schools children to participate in campaigns, and we should encourage that. I joined politics as a young student. The issue is giving young people uniforms for a particular party, basically. In this case, almost like mobilizing child soldiers to go and teach them bad manners, like Enere taught them in Luero. So that's unacceptable. But number two, unfortunately, we. To an extent, what the minister is saying, we are now discussing violence, unacceptable violence that never happened in the UPC government. But what we are missing are the key points. Yesterday, but one, Martin, you'll be delighted to know, I sampled out 4 young people, all of them young graduates, at a pharmacy. Of the 4, 2 of them said they would vote for NRA. But when I actually went into the details, one of them said NUP, the other one said he was not going to vote. The man one said he was not going to vote. So at the end of the conversation with them, I had bad news where I had neutralized the other 2 because they had no grounds to support NRA. You know? Point is, actually, generally, if we did politics of competition of ideas and raised out these things, actually fair politics for tomorrow. What is now happening, and maybe it's in between you guys, NUP guys and the NRA, you need to tell us what's going on. Because it's an election campaign and I'm a net interest as UPC who created this environment. We need to be discussing, you talk about Kampala, we need to be talking about security in Kampala, housing in Kampala, infrastructure in Kampala, taxes for those poor women who once in a while you beat, the environment in Nachibubu, education and health within the capital city is not happening. Take us back to Tororo. You can hardly go to Nagongara until the other day Museveni went down there and they pulled trucks to sort of do the road. Tororo is like a tiny little slum, not the second industrial town that we had all those days. Meaning, we are having election campaign, but with that major issues that are generally affecting our people. Because that massively is worrying me. The majority of young people who are voters today, and I think, Martin, you're lucky, if they focused critically, Louis, if they focused critically and mobilized the majority of young people today, the mathematics you're giving in terms of the numbers that voted in the last election, actually, NRA would find it very, very tricky if we actually focus on the issues and granted hope to young people. You guys are very lucky UPC is not on the ballot, because if we were bound to make sure that we focus on issues, notwithstanding this thing about terrorizing the opposition, and make sure that you guys got the real dealing, but at the ballot, not through the bullet.
Joseph Ochieno, UPC, past, present, and in the future. Thank you very much. David Louis Lugongoya, you may wish to conclude.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just wanted to respond quickly to what Honorable Muganga was saying.
Do you have the time? I doubt it.
Just to say that the numbers they always talk about are not realistic. They will tell you they have 30 people per village and all that. In Kawempe North, they were claiming they had 200,000 people in their register. They even struggled to get 5,000 votes and started, making up numbers and all that. So the people listening to us should not worry about that. But secondly, on that point, they will make it difficult for the opposition to have its structures, make it difficult to even get candidates, to have candidates there, using all sorts of things, and then come here to boast that, you see, we have the numbers, we have the candidates, you guys don't have these candidates. So you do not oppress people, repress them, and then come out boasting. That does not work. Finally, there has been a question, why go to Parliament? I think Parliament is an opportunity to make a further contribution. I've been a Secretary General, I'm still of a political party, and I really understand why it is important for even leaders at the political party level to, try to serve people in other capacities, but also to be able to have this experience and knowledge across the board.
Wow. Could it be said more succinctly? Martin, did you say bye to our listeners? You have less than 30 seconds.
As I say bye, of course, what we are speaking about is actually a challenge to some of the MP candidates in the field. Some are being attacked, even in Kampala here. I've seen no people harassed. I have seen the ones who got the flag and those that did not. My prayer is that we go through this election peacefully. I know the NRM has the capacity. It has built the experience to manage this election with no single incident.
You have tied your opponent's hands at the back, put them in the same boxing ring as you. You have beaten them because their hands are tied, and you're here boasting. That's what Rubongaya was saying. But that said, we unfortunately have had to come to an end of this very interesting conversation where the gangsters, as we know them, regular and sometimes irregular, Yusuf Serunkuma and Joseph Otieno, have sparred it out with the representative from the NRM, or should we say the yellow corner, by Honorable Martin Mugara, and the red corner, represented by no less than the Secretary General of that very party, but also an aspiring member of Parliament, David Louis Lubongoya. For you, our listeners, from wherever it is that you listen to us, we can say more in as far as saying thank you and always keep it there. Let's meet same time, same place next Saturday when we discuss yet the thriving and important issues of the day. Otherwise, stay tuned. It's 91.3 Capital FM.